Hey, I'm here at the 100-year-old Triplex project. If you've been following along, this has been about a year in the making. My last video, you can see a link in the description below, was about the mistakes we made, how we were over budget, how we were over time on this project, but we're done. Tomorrow, the new tenants are moving in on 2 of the units. We're getting $750 per unit for those 2 units and $700 for the third one. And so it's gonna be finally stabilized. All the remodeling's done. I'll get the final invoices and bills here this week. And so after I give you a quick tour of the finished apartments, I wanna go back to the office, go behind the computer and share all the numbers with you. So you can see beginning to end, how much did it cost to fix it up? What were the final numbers? What is my anticipated return on investment? And also, how do we finance this? Because most of it was with our own cash. We also had to get a little bit of a loan to finish the product. So I want to take you behind the scenes, under the hood, so to speak, so you can see exactly how this deal turned out in the end. Let's go. Okay, I want to start off sharing the final overall numbers on what it cost us to fix up this triplex. And I have this is kind of hot off the press, just got my final invoices from my contractor and property manager. We bought this property for $40,000 way back, over a year ago. We have $2,750 in closing costs. Now that includes upfront when we did an inspection, includes the attorney fees and the title insurance costs when we first bought the property. I'm gonna give a few more details here in a minute, but we also, at the very end, did a small refinance with a private lender. So it includes some additional title costs to do that. That's what the closing costs are. $3,100 is holding cost. We actually, for most of that time, didn't have any interest costs because we paid cash for most of this, which I'm gonna show you kind of how we did that. But we did have lawn maintenance cost, we had taxes, we had insurance, and so that includes all of that during the holding period. And then the big, huge cost, of course, which I'm going to break down for you here in a moment, we had $199,200 in repair costs. Now, just to give you some context, this is about a 2,000 square foot triplex. And so if you think about it in like a per square foot type number, we had almost $100 per square foot in remodel cost. In my area, that's pretty high. You could almost build a new house. Some builders have costs below that when they're building a new house. If you were buying it retail, you'd probably be above that as well. But this is a pretty high cost. We are happy with it because it's a historic property, but this is way above what we estimated it would be. We were hoping in the lower, $120,000, $130,000 range. So we were way over budget. You can watch my last video if you look at the playlist series on why some of the mistakes we made. But just to give you some context there, I'm going to show you, is this still a good deal? We're going to run the numbers on that here in a second. But when you total all of that, $245,050 is what we had to come up with. Now, there was one little bit of a nuance there, is that very beginning of this property, we had it rented for a few months. And so we did collect some rent, $1,125 that we used to pay for a little bit of that. But the rest of that, we had to come up either on our own, or as I mentioned in the very end, borrowing. We borrowed a $40,000 private loan at the end just to make sure we had enough cash cushion. And that is the total amount of money we spent. So what I want to do next is give you a breakdown both of how we paid for it, so where that money came from, and also the repair cost, which we'll do next. What was the breakdown of those total repair costs? I don't know about you, but I've always been curious on rental properties, how people actually paid for them. Like, where did the cash come from? So I'm going to show you that in detail on this property. And just to give you some background, this is a partnership. So a rental property partnership. I'm one piece of the partnership. My wife is as well. We have several other partners. And about 5 or 6 years before we bought this triplex, we bought another property, and we all put up some cash into an LLC, and then that LLC bought a rental property. And so since that time, that money's just been collecting in a bank account, and we just chose to use that simple strategy. A lot more details behind the scenes on why that is, but it's just one of the strategies that we've used. We've also done other partnerships where we use a lot of debt. I'm okay with that, but in this case, this worked pretty well. We found a really good deal, and we just set the money aside in the bank. So that's important for this deal, though. That's because our plan was to pay for this entire property purchase and the remodel with that cash in the bank. And so if you look down below here, we had $176,500 in the bank before we bought the property back at the end of 2019. As you know from the last detail that I went over, the total cost here was $245,050. We got a little bit of rent when we first the property was rented when we bought it. So we got $1,125 in rent. So the net cost on this property was $243,925. But we only have $176,500. We thought originally that would cover it and still we like to keep a reserve in the bank as well. So we thought it'd be like $120 to $150. Well, that wasn't the case. So what do we have to do? Well, we were still collecting rent on this other property that we have, and we ended up about $4,000 a month was the number. So over 17 months. From the time we bought it, we actually rented the property out a few months and before we even started the remodel. But during that time, we were able to save some money, $68,000 in net rent from that other property that we have. And then we also, by that time, but that still wasn't enough. We wanted to have a reserve, but that would have used almost all of it up. We also got a private loan at the very end just to make sure we had enough cushion. And in fact, we did need that because when you add up how much money we had in the bank, the net rent we got from that other property, and this loan, we had about $40,575 left in the bank at the end of the remodel. So going forward, I'm going to show you some forward-looking kind of return on investment estimates, but just from a cash flow standpoint, our plan is to build up some reserves again using the net rent from our other property and from this new property, which rents for $2,200 per month. We'll have to pay some expenses out of that, taxes, insurance, management fees, maintenance, things like that. But we'll definitely net $1,000, maybe $1,400 a month. And we're going to add all that together. And when we get to a point where we're comfortable, probably about $10,000 or $20,000 in the bank, we'll then pay off that loan, get rid of that. And this strategy of this LLC is not to have any debt. So that is the financing and cash picture. Let's now go look at a breakdown of that $245,000 in cost, actually the remodel cost. I want to show you how that broke down and what we actually paid for to fix that triplex up. So now let's look at how do we actually spend $199,000 and change on a remodel. You might be curious about that. I was definitely curious about that. And I'm just going to go down this list. This is a spreadsheet. I had to total up budget from several sources. We had different remodeling contractors. All of this goes into QuickBooks, which is an accounting software we use. So every time I write a check, sometimes this is delayed when I actually get to like labeling it, but you label it based on a category. So as you can see here, all the exterior repairs, roof decking, soffits, fascia, you take the information from that invoice, I put it into QuickBooks, and then at the end, you have a nice report like this where you can see a breakdown. So I'm just gonna scroll down this list. These first things are all in the exterior of the property. We spent about 4.5% of the total budget on roof, and that included that actually, if you add in the decking, we had to replace a bunch of soffits and boards that were rotten because the old roof was leaking so much. You know, we had over 6% of the total budget in roof. We had siding and fascia, like the trim kind of work. We had a little bit of work on that as well. Soffits and fascia, actually those were two different, those were overages. We got an extra nice type of vinyl material or something. So it cost a little bit extra. So a little about 2% on trim and soffits, that kind of thing. Gutters, siding was about 5% of the project. So you saw that the new blue siding was we upgraded a little bit. You had the basic kind of siding. There's a little bit nicer look. Windows, exterior doors, and then just a tiny bit on landscaping. We actually could have spent a lot more, but we were over budget. We also could have spent a lot more on decks, which we will in the future. We're going to reinvest some money having some nicer decks and nicer railings, so maybe some overhangs so that when somebody's sitting there on the porch trying to open the door, have a little bit of a cover over them, a rain cover. So we could have spent more money, We didn't, but about 35,000 of the total budget of 199 or total actual spent was on the outside, about almost 17.5% of the total budget. So let's go inside. The demo, so the demolition of the property, which happened multiple times at the very beginning, but then as we hired new contractors, they found other things they had to rip out, was about 5% of the project, almost $10,000. So a lot of work. This is one of the highest demo costs I've had in a long time, but just the labor to do a lot of things under there. Foundation repair. There's actually some of the foundation repair was probably allocated to this other rough carpentry line item, but about 9%, almost 9%, 17,500. So if you add up the other rough carpentry, I know we spent at least 25 grand on the foundation as well. Rough plumbing, we replumbed the entire property, $6,300. Also, we added in there some tubs, brand new bathtubs, $2,100 for the materials for that. We had new hot water heaters put in, and we used tankless hot water heaters. We didn't have a lot of space in the crawl space for the normal hot water heaters, so we used exterior tankless ones. And they had to run gas lines to do that, so there was also some additional labor running that and attaching that. The rough electrical, so this is pulling all the new wiring, the new outlets, and just having them ready there for before you put in sheetrock. That was $6,400, 3.21% of our budget. Rough carpentry, I mentioned there's a lot of things that went into that bucket, both additional foundation work, also walls and different pieces of the inside that had to be reframed up. So a lot of work on that. Bathroom floors were bad. We had to that was kind of a midstream budget change that we had to add on to there as well. Sheetrock was $11,000 total, about 5.5% of the project. Interior doors and interior trim, I think those kind of had there's some crossover there, but about $9,000 for the people who came in and did the trim work and doors. So another almost 5% of the project for that. Interior paint was actually one of the few items that was below what I thought it would be. It's about $4,000 doing the finish painting. And then finish electrical, this also included some plumbing. So that sometimes the labeling, if one company does multiple things, wasn't perfect. But between finish plumbing and finish electrical, which is putting all the light fixtures in, the outlets, attaching stoves, doing different things like that, was about 4% of the budget, just over $8,000. Kitchen cabinets, the biggest component was putting in kitchen counters, cabinets. We didn't use anything fancy on the countertops, used laminate countertops, but brand new cabinets and brand new counters and mirrors and things like that in the bathroom. It was $16,749 for those 3 units. Appliances cost a lot, about 5% of our budget, almost $10,000. Flooring and vinyl cost more than what I thought it was going to be. That definitely went up from the beginning, also almost 5% of the budget. Insulation, HVAC, $13,300 for the 3 different units. And then permits, almost the local city has to get their money to come inspect it and do that. Project management, I paid somebody early on when didn't have a lot of time to work on this, just to go be my eyes and ears and help me out there. Dumpsters and porta potties, about $4,000, almost $4,000 on dumpsters and porta potties for all that demolition work. And then just a bunch of final miscellaneous cleanup work, $2,500. So there you have it, $164,000 inside, $35,000 outside, totaled up to $199,000. All right, so you've seen the numbers, the raw numbers, both in terms of how we paid for it, the remodeling cost. I now want to switch gears and go to a spreadsheet to analyze kind of forward-looking, what do we expect to make as a return on this property? It's definitely not as good as what I anticipated up front, but you might be curious to see what we're actually going to make in terms of cash flow and what we anticipate making as a return in the future. Now for this final piece of the video, I want to go through how I would analyze this deal to answer the question, is this a good deal or not? And I'll give you the sneak preview. This is not the best deal we've ever done, but I think you'll be interested to see that it's actually kind of like a base hit in baseball, not a horrible deal for all the work and effort we put into getting it ready. I think we should have done better, but we're still going to make money on this deal. And let me show you how I analyze that. So this spreadsheet that you're looking at here is one that I use and provide in my course, Rental Property Analysis. So I'm going to show you how I use it. But if you're interested in getting instructions and a course on how to use a spreadsheet like this to analyze rental properties and to get a copy of this actual spreadsheet, look at the link in the video description below to that course, Rental Property Analysis. So what I do here, though, everything you see in the red cells where the text is in red, those are assumptions that I need to fill in. So for example, $40,000 purchase price, $199,200. You'll remember that. That's the repair cost. And then my closing cost, and I also put holding costs in there as well, $47,225. So that total number, $243,925 was our total cash out of pocket. So the other assumptions we had to put in here was the amount of rent. We're currently getting $750 on 2 units and $700 on the third unit. So that's $2,200 per month. We're assuming a 5% vacancy rate. That means it would be vacant at least once every 2 years. So about a month every 2 years. So which may or may not happen. That's a pretty good estimate for us in our market. We did get I mentioned earlier, a financing at the very end of the project, but we're going to pay that off pretty quickly. So I'm assuming in this analysis that we're having no debt on the property. So we had to put 100% down, $40,000. And so our total cash outlay is the same amount as the total cost. If you were using financing, this spreadsheet allows you to put how much you're going to put down and then change the interest rate, whether you're paying interest only or mortgages. It would kind of use that to calculate some other things later on. But in this case, pretty simple. We're paying all cash. We're also having to make some assumptions about value. This is a 2,000 square foot property. I'm estimating about $110 per square foot for new construction, or to replace if you were to have a replacement cost. So there's some figures here I'm going to show you in a minute how we figure out the total value and the total return in the end. We have to assume what's it worth now. I'm thinking about $250,000. I need to get some estimates from some other realtors on that. So we're pretty close to what the property's worth in the total investment we have. But over time, if it appreciates at 3%, I think in 10 years it could be worth about $336,000 approximately. And then there's some assumptions here on what it would cost to sell that property. So I'm going to use all that information to get what's called an internal rate of return, or what I'm estimating over the next 10 years we could actually make on this property. So let me show you how that all kind of comes together. This section here is a year-by-year estimate of the operating income and expenses. So I'm assuming that the annual rent's going to go up about 2% per year. The expenses I'm going to assume are going to go up about 2% per year as well. So then it kind of extrapolates that year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way out. These are my revenues, rental income, and puts that on a yearly basis, vacancy cost, and then it gives you what's left over after vacancy. And then you have to input all of these expenses. Property taxes in this case is about $1,060 per year. I think that's going to go up in the next couple of years, but that's what it is for now. $1,970 in insurance. Maintenance and capital expense, that's always a big one, and I'll do some videos in the future about how much that costs. But in this case, I'm thinking about 7.5% of my rent, almost $2,000 per year, will be gone in maintenance. And then capital expense down here, this is almost everything's brand new, but I'm going to anticipate replacing the roof eventually, the heating and airs. It'll take a while to accumulate those capital expenses, but I like to be conservative on that number. So we'll have that repair expense, the property management fee, we're paying a manager to manage it for us. But when all that's totaled up, we'll have about $8,800 in operating expenses, which is about 39% of our total rent. And so every year we will our net operating income is $16,241. At least that's what we estimate. And so remember there's no mortgage payment here, so that all goes into our bank account. And the kind of bottom line number for us, because it's a real simple scenario, is we're making about a 6.6% return on our cash just from the rental income. And that's the main metric we're looking at here. What's our cash on cash return? That's also known as some people call that a cap rate, or more accurately, because we had this not just the return on our purchase price, it's return on our total investment, a rental yield, or return on asset. And so those are all the kind of same number in this case, 6.66%. I'm going to show you the next screen though, let's extrapolate that out. Let's include some appreciation assumptions. What would this look like in the end? So this third tab of my spreadsheet, we have just a summary of all this. $16,000 in income per year, $1,300 per month, $1,350 per month is what we'll be estimating we'll net every month and put in the bank account. So we can use that to save up and reinvest to buy other properties. Remember how we did that on the other one? The total cost here has some assumptions. You can see we paid about 98% of what the property's worth. That's not great. I would like to have a bigger discount, but it's better than being 120% of what the property's worth. And then here you have return on asset or rental yield. That's kind of like a cap rate, but it's the kind of the ratio of what our net rent is every year to what we paid for the property all in. That's 6.6%. And all of these are about the same because we don't have any leverage. But this is the bottom line number that I usually look at when I'm trying to see how good of an investment this is for me. And what this takes is the future value of the property. So if we sold it 10 years from now, we paid a commission, we put that money in the bank, and then if you included all the cash flows we've accumulated over the last 10 years, this is what our return is based on this internal rate of return calculation, 9%. So this is an unleveraged return. If we wanted to use some leverage, borrow money at 3 or 4%, I'm sure we could get that return up to 15%, maybe 17%. That's not our strategy in this case. We have, you have to know where you are in your career. Having no leverage, having very steady cash flow, very low risk is what our objective is in this partnership. And so this is reasonable, right? Having a 6.6% cash return and then having a 9% return overall, that's pretty good. I mean, I would like that to be in the 12 to 15% return unleveraged. That would be a good deal for me. 9%. I'm gonna, when it's all said and done, we're gonna be making money. Our money's gonna be growing. We're gonna be reinvesting it. But I think I just like to pause here for a second because you've been through this whole journey of this video and also the journey of this playlist. If you've watched all these videos, we made some big mistakes. We had to underestimated our repair cost. But the one thing we did well was we bought this property at a pretty low price and we bought it in a good location. And this location is gonna get better and better over time. We've got good tenants in the property. And so when you look at the big picture of an investment over the long run, when you're a buy and hold investor, sometimes you can bail yourself out from some mistakes you make early on in a property, as long as you in the end make it a good property and buy it in a good location. Things can get pretty good over time. And so that number might get even better. Let's say we had some different appreciation assumptions. Let's assume it appreciated at 5%. We just got really lucky. Our area just took off. I'd make about a 10.5% return instead of a 9-point-something% return. So these numbers are just a guesstimate. They're an estimate, but I hope you can see that having an analysis tool like this can be helpful. And I hope it gives you a big picture of what this property has been all about for us. There you have it. That's the real story behind the scenes from my 100-year-old triplex project. I hope the details, the finances, the good and the bad has been helpful for you. That's been my intention. I would love to hear from you in the comment section below if you found this video helpful, if you have any questions, if you have any other comments. And if you're new to this channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button and the little bell so you don't miss anything. I have new videos that come out every Friday morning. Some of them are vlog style like this, behind the scenes. Some are tutorials, some are book reviews, but all of them are related to this topic of financial independence and using real estate to do more of what matters. I think you'll also, if you like this particular video on the final step of this triplex project, be sure to look at the entire playlist. I've got a playlist that you'll see somewhere above me here and also in the video description below. So you can see the entire before and after from beginning to end as this project went on for the last year. So I think you'll enjoy that. You've been watching Coach Carson TV. My name is Chad Carson. You can call me Coach, and this is a channel all about real estate investing, financial independence, and doing more of what matters. See you next time.